Hello and welcome to Haunted Montreal's Spooky Story Sessions. I'm your host, Holly Rhiannon, and today I'm going to tell you all about the Redpath Museum. With over 350 documented ghost stories, Montreal is easily the most haunted city in Canada, if not all of North America. Haunted Montreal is dedicated to researching these paranormal tales, and our channel brings you new videos in both French and English every second Saturday. Today we examine McGill University's Redpath Museum and all of its creepy artifacts. With shrunken heads, stolen mummies, and dinosaur bones sometimes moving of their own accord, rumors abound that the Victorian Era Redpath Museum is haunted. But before we get into today's story, please remember to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button so you get notified every time we have a new tale to share. And hey, if you're already subscribed, a big thank you and welcome back. We are so happy to see you again. Now, without further ado, let's get spooky. Entering McGill University's Redpath Museum is like stepping back in time into the Victorian era. Hosting bizarre collections of dinosaur bones, shrunken heads, and stolen Egyptian mummies, the Redpath Museum is unique among Montreal attractions. According to various reports, it is also haunted, with shrunken heads said to stare at people and the skeletons sometimes moving on their own accord. While the museum is certainly an interesting place to visit, some guests experience frightening paranormal activity within the dusty establishment. The Redpath Museum is one of the oldest museums in Canada. Commissioned by Sugar Baron Peter Redpath, the Natural History Museum's purpose was to protect and display the vast collection of Sir William Dawson. As the principal of McGill University and a famous natural scientist, he had amassed a large collection over the years during his many travels. With a combination of eclectic Victorian classicism and Greek Revival architecture, not to mention its creepy exhibitions, the Redpath Museum was immediately popular when it opened in 1882. The vast collection includes various rare stones and fossils, as well as many skeletons, including an anaconda snake and Gorgosaurus dinosaur. Taxidermied animals are also on display, such as a lion, a wolf, silverback gorilla, and a giant spider crab. There are also stolen mummies, Egyptian coffins, a cast of the Rosetta Stone, African musical instruments, a shrunken head, and other rare and bizarre artifacts. One of the paranormal problems within the Redpath Museum is that some of the artifacts seem to take on a life of their own. Whether this is just people's eyes playing tricks on them or if the artifacts actually move on their own, the situation is reminiscent of the 2006 Hollywood film Night at the Museum starring Ben Stiller. For starters, throughout the museum's history, there have been all sorts of whisperings about haunted activity, from artifacts moving on their own or going missing to bizarre noises including growling and the sounds of bones clacking. The museum is rumored to be a very haunted environment. There are many anecdotes from reliable sources. In 2008, Montreal Gazette journalist Al Cortina visited the Redpath Museum for an article titled Creepy Montreal. He noted not only a sheet made of human teeth, but also a shrunken head displayed among the exhibitions on the top floor. Cortina sensed that the shrunken head was staring at him. He described the gaze as an evil eye. The journalist quickly pulled out a piece of hematite, a stone used to deflect negative energy to protect himself from the shrunken head's disturbing gaze. Others have described the shrunken head as giving them a cork eye, and one McGill student even claimed that the horrible artifact had snickered at her on one occasion. In other occasions, people have heard the disembodied rattling of bones in the Redpath Museum. One night guard, who has since retired, reported hearing bones crackling and rattling on several occasions during his graveyard shifts. He also noted, while patrolling the third floor overlooking the lower levels, something that deeply unnerved him. Sitting atop a display case is the skeleton of an anaconda snake. Horrified, the guard recalled sometimes that this sound of bones clacking occurred in the middle of the night, and every following morning he observed that the serpentine bones had shifted into a different position. Moving on to a point I'm sure you noted earlier about the stolen Egyptian mummies. The Redpath World Cultures collection has 3 human mummies as well as approximately 20 animal mummies, such as cats, crocodiles, and falcons. There are also 2 mummified human heads along with various mummified hands and feet. During the mid-19th century, McGill Chancellor James Ferrier acquired 2 Theban mummies while in Egypt. He passed them along to the Redpath Museum. In 1895, Sir Thomas Roddick, the Dean of McGill's Faculty of Medicine, donated a Fayum mummy. This brought the collection's total number of intact human mummies to 3. One reason the museum may be haunted is the fact that all 3 of the ancient mummies were victims of grave robbing and illegal antiquity sales. It is well known that violating the tombs of Egyptian mummies can result in deadly curses. The most famous mummy case is undoubtedly that of King Tutankhamun, which resulted in 9 people suffering serious calamities. Some people believe that both James Ferrier and Sir Thomas Roddick suffered from curses due to their theft of the mummies that they had donated to the Redpath Museum. On May 30th, 1884, Ferrier died suddenly following a brief illness. Sir Thomas Roddick died on February 20th, 1923, and was buried at the Mount Royal Cemetery 2 days later. However, upon reading his will on February 26th, the executors realized his final wishes had been to be cremated. They demanded Sir Roddick be exhumed and cremated according to his wishes. His wife, Lady Roddick, staunchly opposed his exhumation and cremation. She told the funeral director that her husband had changed his mind shortly before his death. The Quebec Superior Court oversaw the case and Lady Roddick was successful. Left in the ground, her husband's corpse would be eaten by worms instead of burning in a crematorium, something Sir Roddick had originally feared. Whatever the case, the Redpath Museum used an MRI scanner to reconstruct the faces of the 3 mummies. These are now on display, but there are worries that those who worked on the project may have been cursed by their subjects. Lastly, the disembodied growling noises seem to emanate from the taxidermied silverback gorilla. Acquired through McGill's Congo exhibition in the 1930s, the gorilla was put on display and affectionately named George by staff members. At the time, museum official T.H. Clark described the gorilla's purpose as a way to illustrate scientific features and facts, in addition to raising cultural and educational awareness among the public. A label of Mammalia primates pongidae was attached to George's podium to help visitors identify his species. George was extremely popular and drew many visitors to the Redpath Museum. The gorilla even appeared in newspapers such as the Montreal Star, Montreal Herald, and McGill Daily, all of which described the massive beast as a very manly leader in the primate world. Unfortunately, during the mid-1950s, a group of deranged McGill students decided to play a very nasty prank on the silverback gorilla. Several students, wearing lab coats, entered the museum and asked the museum director if they could borrow the gorilla. They explained that a professor had made the request for academic purposes. The museum acquiesced and the students removed George from the museum. The following morning, a professor discovered the silverback gorilla perched atop McGill's famous Three Bears fountain. To make matters worse, the pranksters had castrated poor George. Soon after officials returned George to his proper place in the Redpath Museum, reports of his disembodied growling began to surface. Sometimes, to this very day, children visiting the museum get frightened when they hear a sudden growl emanating from the castrated silverback gorilla. Needless to say, with so much haunting at the museum, calls have increased to decolonize the Redpath. Gloria Bell, an assistant professor of Indigenous Arts at McGill University, told the McGill Tribune that the Redpath Museum has a historicizing, outdated, primitivizing display and employs a very old-school strategy. There are now calls to repatriate the artifacts, although one problem is that many of the origins remain unclear. Whatever the case, McGill University's Redpath Museum is a relic of the past with a Victorian-era atmosphere and a host of paranormal problems. For the ghost hunters out there, it is well worth a visit. Are you a Montreal resident or perhaps a tourist who has had a strange encounter at the Redpath Museum? If so, we'd love to know. As always, we want to hear your theories about what could be going on. Thank you so much for stopping by. If this is your first video, we do hope you'll stick around for the next one. We post videos in both French and English every second Saturday. If you'd like to learn more about the organization founded by the talented Donovan King, it's all listed in the description down below, along with links to purchase tickets to in-person haunted storytelling experiences. We are really gearing up right now as we head into spooky season, so be sure to check it out. Remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'll have a new video out for you in a couple weeks, but until then, stay spooky.